couple videos ago, I talked about looking at the abuses of the parent-child minds, the adult mind, to kind of see if the person will be operating more of the child mind or adult mind or parent mind. Okay. Now, another really important factor for that, and a good place to just start to kind of get the base and say, okay, this is probably where it's coming from, is to look at what house Rahu and Ketu are closest to. Okay? So, what angle? Angles are houses 1, 4, 7, and 10. These houses are significant in that they all have to do with gender, with male and female. They're the extremes of male and female. So the 10th house is very male. It's considered to be the father, and it's a male house. The 4th house is feminine. It's the mother. It's the most female house. It's female in everyone's chart. The 10th house is male in everyone's chart. Okay? Then we have the 1st house. The 1st house is your gender. So if you're born in a boy's body, your gender is male. If you're born in a girl's body, your gender is female. Now, if you've got gender identity things to work out and you're trying to figure out what gender you are, this is based on the body. Okay? If a person has a male body and feels like a female, that doesn't change this. Okay? That will be indicated by stuff that's going on with these gender houses that's making them feel that way even though they possess a male body. First house is Tanu, which means the body in Sanskrit. Okay? So, it's your gender. So if you're male, the 1st house is male. If you're female, the 1st house is female. The 7th house is your opposite gender. So if you're female, it's male, and if you're a male, it's female. Now, we've learned that the child mind is Moon and Mars, and the parent mind is Sun and Saturn. So, the feminine is Moon, the masculine is Sun, right? So the male houses are more inclined to operate out of the parent mind if they're not operating out of the adult mind. And the female houses are more inclined to operate out of the child mind if there's no adult managing things. Okay? So, whatever angle Ketu is closest to is the mind the person more naturally, more readily, more easily, and with greater feelings of safety acts out of. So if a person has Ketu closest to the 10th house, they're going to act more out of the parental mind. If they have Ketu closest to the 4th house, they're going to act more out of the child mind. Okay? Then if they're male and they have Ketu closest to the 1st, they're going to act out of the parental mind. And if they're female with Ketu closest to the 1st, they're going to act more out of the child mind. Okay? Now, if Ketu is closest to the 7th, then if they're male, they're going to act more out of the female mind. And if they're female, they're going to act more out of the parental mind. Okay? If they're female, they're going to act more out of the child mind. And if they're male, they're going to act more out... If they're female and Ketu is closest to the 7th, they're going to act out of the parental mind. And if they're male with Ketu closest to the 7th, they're going to act more out of the child mind. Did I say that right? I think so. Okay, so the female side is more child mind. The male side is more parental mind. And that's just so funny, isn't it? You know, we have this idea, like if you watch old movies with snobby husbands and wives who are allowed to play the piano, you know, like movies from the 1700s and, you know, things like that. You know, women are not supposed to have views on politics. Well, yeah, they're not supposed to have views on politics because if you're child-minded, you're not supposed to have views on politics. But the joke to that is, if you're parental-minded, you're not supposed to have views on politics either. So men are not supposed, about that age, who are stuck in their parental mind, are not meant to have views on politics either. The only person who can safely have views on politics is somebody in their adult mind, and that can be a male or a female. Okay? So, it's just so funny to me when I watch those movies. They're like, women have no business in politics. I'm like, well, neither do men who think they know everything already, you know? And they're just following some program. Adult minds have the ability to be involved and make decisions about politics, okay? So, and a male or female can be in the adult mind. So, but it doesn't matter if we're male or female embodied. What matters is what house is K2 closest to. If it's closest to a female house, you're going to act more out of your child mind. If it's closest to your male house, you're going to act more out of your parental mind. Now, is this good or bad? It's neither. It depends. If a person's acting out more, living more in their child mind, but they have a really lovely child mind, they got a nice moon and a nice Venus, they're going to be wonderful to spend time with. They're going to be kind, sweet, adorable, fun. They won't be stubborn. They'll be wonderful, wonderful people to spend time with. Because, babies are fun to spend time with when they're smiling. So someone who lives in the child mind, and it's a happy child, is the best company, really. Okay. On the other hand, someone who's living out of the child mind, that's an angry, needy, upset, never had its needs met child, spending time with that person can be daunting and exhausting and extremely frustrating. Okay? Now, on the other hand, if someone's living out of the parent mind, if they got great parental planets, great parental planet signs, this is going to be a person who has good knowledge, good information, hands down wise stuff. This is the idea of the lineages in India. You do what your teacher and parents do, and you do it to the other people, and it keeps going forever. Well, that works as long as nothing changes, but as soon as life starts changing, the adult needs to come in and say, maybe these parental ideas aren't valid anymore, okay? In a traditional culture where things don't change, this idea of handing down knowledge and information and the student just absorbs it has a lot to do with, propagating working ideas of the parental mind. So it can be great being around someone who has a fantastic parental mind. It means they have good, solid information, okay? Their do's and don'ts actually will work, okay? So they can be great guides. Now, on the other hand, you get a person who's living more out of the adult mind, okay? The parental mind, and they have bad parental planets. Then this person is stuck on ideas so stiffly that they're not going to serve anyone well, including themselves. And you will not be able to be around those people. You're just going to have to leave. These are the people that no one can be around. No one can even remotely be themselves around, And it's just not tolerable to live in their presence, because they're over-parenting. Their parenting ideas are literally insane. If people don't follow their ideas, they dismiss and will not acknowledge their children the rest of their lives. You know how sometimes a parent says, if you do that, don't call me father, don't call me mother. Well, these are people stuck in their parental minds. If you do that, I don't want to know you. Even friends will say that. Okay? These are people who are living out of their parental mind, and the parental mind is not healthy. Okay? So, the parental mind and the child mind have a lot to offer when they're healthy. Okay? We'll be so thankful for the people with a good parental mind because the guidance they can give can be invaluable. We'll love spending time with people with a beautiful child mind because it'll just be so wonderful to be with that child mind. Okay? But ultimately, to grow and have more connection, more things working right in our life, more healthy guidance, we have to step into the adult mind. So a person can have great parental mind and great child mind, but if they're not growing more into their adult minds, they're going to stay at a certain level. And that's not satisfying to the child mind. The child mind needs more. It wants to grow into bigger experiences to create a connection. Otherwise, there's always an element of separation nagging on even the healthiest child mind. Okay? So, for everyone, no matter how healthy their parents, adults are, need to develop. There's places to develop. There's things to explore. And really, when the child mind and the parental minds are really healthy, the place where the adult mind needs to explore is really the spiritual realm. This, they need to explore meditations. They need to explore transcendental activities. Because once the child mind and parental minds are healthy and no longer sabotaging our lives, what else is there to do? The greater connection is going to come from spiritual connection. Okay? All right, so look at what angle, 1, 4, 7, or 10 is closest to K2. I talked about this a lot in the last Rahu K2 course, the Mastering Rahu K2 course, I think it was called. But now you know how to also bring in, this means they're going to be more inclined to live on a day-to-day basis out of the child mind. It'll be more comfortable for them. They'll find it working for them than it will be living out of the other mind. Okay? And it's really interesting to watch people with this. You get two people together who've got K2 in the first house and are opposite gender, or K2 closest to the same house and opposite gender. Okay? One closest to the first, one closest to the seventh, because 4th and 10th are always the same for every gender. But 1st and 7th flop. Okay? And you'll get one person who has K2 closest to the first, the male person, who will subjugate their feelings at the expense because of their parental mind. And that's just normal for them. Then the female who's got K2 to the closest first will ignore all the parental voices, do whatever her child mind feels, and we've got like two complete opposites. It reminds me of this movie. There's this one part of the movie that, always somehow is like, oh, that's really interesting. It's that movie, Tombstone, okay, made like 20-some years ago. Wyatt Earp is played by, what's his name? Goldie Hawn's husband. And Sam Elliott plays Virgil Earp. It's the famous, and of course, Doc Holliday is played by Val Kilmer. Did an amazing job in that role. People know the movie I'm talking about, that version of Tombstone. So Wyatt Earp has this wife who's basically become an addict to laudanum, opium-based painkiller. And their relationship just hasn't worked, Now he meets a girl who's an actress. And this actress is just a free spirit, She's just free-spirited, free-living. And there's a scene in the movie when he's first realizing what a free spirit is, and he looks at her and he just kind of laughs. And he's like, I don't know what the words are, but he's like, you're something else. It's like, he's just like appreciating that someone can just live like this, so freely, so out of the child mind, basically. Where here's, Wyatt Earp, who is a lawman, following rules, living according to his family rules, upholding the law, who's really this kind of grumpy guy who's stuck in the parental mind, And for some reason, I remember that part of the movie of just seeing, he's like happily perplexed by this experience. And this person allows him to like drop his parental mind for a few minutes every day and laugh and have fun, actually. So when you see, it's really always funny to see these same opposite gender people with similar, opposite minds interacting with each other. They're just behaving completely differently with how they're treating themselves. So I don't know, if you've seen that movie, you know that thing I'm trying to convey. So the point of that is just how different it is when people live out of their child or parental mind. The problem is they're both very limiting. Okay? The adult mind is the part that that can delegate attention to both sides of our mind in the most healthy way that allows for the greatest connection. Because someone living out of their child mind all the time, that child mind will actually disrupt their connections. The child mind doesn't have the ability to make connections better. Okay? But acting out of that child mind, it can disrupt working connections. It can just get a feeling for something without any thought, do something that disrupts a connection. And a parental mind, too, will disrupt connections. It'll have a connection, and then something will happen where it says, no, I can't be okay with this. My parental mind does not tolerate this. and now the connection with that other person starts getting damaged. It's only the adult mind that can have the acceptance, the understanding, the perception to maintain connections, and better yet, to increase the connection of connections. All right? So it doesn't matter how well your connections are happening because of your parent and adult mind. It's just if you're living in those minds, it's just a matter of time before they're what hurts your connections. Okay? A free spirit will one day be too free in their emotions and somehow hurt the relationship. A parental mind will one day be too strict and find a reason to dismiss everyone in their lives. There's this really good documentary, it's called Strip Down to Rise Up. Okay, and it's a documentary of a woman who has pole dancing lessons where she basically does really intense psychotherapy with these girls, and essentially are bringing them back to a child mind state that they lost, usually due to sexual abuse, And one of these women gets really into pole dancing. It changes her perception of herself, and she wants to compete. She's just loving it. And her husband says, "You have to quit pole dancing." And she's like, "Oh, I don't want to." He goes, "If you don't quit, I'm divorcing you." So she thinks about it. She's like, "I'm out of here." So here's this guy who obviously at some point they were feeling loving enough, their child minds were interacting enough, their parental minds had enough similar views that they decided to get married, And we're thinking, we're married, we're going to be married, live happily ever after. But then one day, she decided she needed something that his parental mind could not tolerate. My wife cannot be a stripper. She's not a stripper, she's just a pole dancer. She doesn't even throw clothes around the stage. She just gets in, maybe wears some super high heels, and gets some workout on a stick, And he has a problem with that to the point where he divorces her. That's what's always going to happen when people are living out of the parent mind. They're always going to find a reason to write somebody off. And the child mind will always do something in too much of a spirit of emotional freedom that doesn't consider the other person's feelings and hurt that other person. Okay? Even though there's times when those parental and child minds can come together in ways that really work beautifully, it won't last without the parental mind, without the adult mind being present. And then there's a crisis, and at that point, are the adult minds going to be able to come in, reestablish the connection, start working for a better connection, or when that crisis comes, are they stuck in their child mind, in their parental mind, and now it's time to end the relationship, to end the connection, okay? Or the connection is irrevocably damaged. So it doesn't matter how great your parent and child minds are. The secret is always developing the adult mind. And that's why the majority of our active life, from 3 to 50, it's all about developing our adult mind through those 3 ages of Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. A couple